Hi, welcome to the Africa Podcast. My name is Brandon Collins, and on this new episode, we are speaking with Wendy Guerrero for the Bentonville Film Festival. Wendy Guerrero is a prominent figure in the film industry, known for her leadership and advocacy for diversity and inclusion in cinema. She has been instrumental in promoting underrepresented voices in entertainment through her work with the Film Festival and its associated BF Foundation. Please enjoy this amazing conversation I have with Wendy about her career and the impactful mission of the Bentonville Film Festival. We'll be back in a moment with our full interview. The Africa Podcast is sponsored by Morgan Stanley, Global Sports and Entertainment. Congratulations on the 10-year anniversary. Well, how was that?
Thank you. That was actually a huge fulfilling milestone. I mean, we can't believe 10 years went by so fast, but it was really a special year for everybody involved, and to kind of look back and see how far we've come has been really nice. So thanks.
Absolutely. For our listeners, could you explain kind of how you got involved with the festival 10 years ago? I'm always been very curious. What is your schedule like as you prepare for an annual event? Like, what do you do day to day?
Wow. So do you want to know how I personally got involved?
Oh, you personally got involved, and then I want to hear about your schedule.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am a big proponent of non-traditional backgrounds, and typically because I come from a very non-traditional background. I started out going to acting school. So I went to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco and really just studied theater. And then with really no desire to work behind the camera or behind the scenes. And then I moved to New York and went back to school to Circle in the Square, a conservatory, and just was really focused on theater for a long while until noticing that many of the works that we studied in theater were written by men. So I was working on all of these incredible plays from these incredible playwrights that I really appreciate and love. But I wondered, where were all the women playwrights, and especially the new women playwrights? So I started my own company, and I started working with women that were developing and writing new plays, and I would stage them. So, we would put them up on stage for the first time so they could actually see what they had written on the page come to life in the round or in a theater space. And so I really was, auditioning, and then I got very into working on just new plays by women. And coming from a diverse background myself, my father's from Mexico and my mother's from US, I was always interested in identity and wondering how that influenced storytelling, and why I never saw not only just women, but multiracial women like myself or other people of color in the main roles with sort of the main action behind them. There was a lot of ancillary roles and things that I was playing. And then when I was auditioning, I always got the feedback that I was too exotic looking, like I was uncastable. And this was way back like in the early 2000s, when a lot of these ideas of belonging and, what non-traditional, traditional casting was kind of just coming to the ethers, not really the forefront. But most of the reasons that they gave me that I didn't get jobs was because I was too European looking or too exotic looking, like I didn't look American enough. And I really was like confused by that, because I felt, I was born in America and I felt so American. But and I worked through all of that by continuing to work in theater and in film. I started my own production company called Publicly Private to focus on stories made and told by women. And then I heard that Gina was doing this festival. Obviously, I had been aware of Gina's work at the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media for a while, and understanding the work they were doing there for representation of women and girls in media, and was a huge fan, and learned about it through a mutual friend that she was starting this film festival and that Walmart was going to be a founding partner. And I had the opportunity to meet Gina and tell her a little bit about my background and what I had been working on in my journey to feel like representation for women and diverse women was important. And I ended up going to Walmart with her to talk about what a female producer, especially a female producer of color, was experiencing in the entertainment industry, and why a festival like the Bentonville Film Festival was important to have this festival that really championed these, stories that were not typically told. And then from there, I was just working with the festival the last 10 years as their president of programming. And then I'm the executive director, president of the film festival and the foundation. So we do have a nonprofit arm to the festival as well.
Understood. So you're juggling a few different things and departments. And so, yeah, going back to the second part of my question, which is, what is your schedule like, and how do you balance all these different tasks and responsibilities?
It's a lot, but I love having something different to do every day. So that's kind of why I thrive in this environment, is that, we're working on not only, grants for the foundation to continue, but we're also, working on sponsorships. Obviously, it takes a lot of commitment from sponsors and from grants to make a festival like ours run all year round. And we do have initiatives and programs that we have ongoing with sponsors and organizations from like NBC Universal and Mars. So all of our partners play a key role in continuing to support the festival. And those are a lot of my days are filled with those relationships, and continuing to explain and to make the case for why, these programs should continue to be present, and how we can further deepen our ties and relationships and access to funding for storytellers that may not even have, access to these types of pathways. And then just kind of on programming, as we're constantly looking at films, we're constantly watching films with my artistic director, Drea Clark. We get deep into, the submissions process. We have over 1,200, films or pieces of content, from short films and episodics to documentaries and narratives, that come through the festival through the submission cycle. A lot of my day is focused on that and developing new partners and making sure that we're retaining our ones from 10 years ago.
I really appreciate that, getting that insight into your process. Now, I love films. I love watching them. I imagine you do as well. But how do you handle just watching so many submissions and not allowing, maybe your genre bias or just exhaustion to keep the North Star when you're watching submissions and figure out what's best for the festival?
Well, there is a little bit of protection for me now from watching everything. But when I was president of programming, it was waking up at 5 a.m., watching, sometimes 5 to 7 films in a day. And it is hard to keep everything, straight when you're watching that many films. So, we have weekly calls or bi-weekly calls when we get into that mode. And I call it, that we all know that when we're getting into, this is the season sort of when Sundance announces, and right after that is like when we're just really watching everything. So it's hard, but I love it. I'm like you. I just love the creativity. I love the storytelling. I really, that's one of my favorite parts about the job. And even though I don't get to do it as often as I did when I was actually in charge of all of the programming, Drea kind of tips up most of the things that are scoring well, because we have a group of screeners as well. So everything gets watched and it gets scored. And then as it goes up from those, those pathways, then I start watching most of the things.
Understood. Now, yeah, absolutely. Now, given the mission of the festival, how do you and your team communicate and follow up with artists who don't get accepted or featured in that festival, while also being encouraging, given the focus on representation and making sure you're elevating underserved voices?
That's the hardest part, I think, is because we do have so many relationships with our alumni. We've had over 10,000 alumni come through the festival over the 10 years. So a lot of those are repeat submitters, because, thank goodness they're still making films and they're still doing the work, but obviously everyone knows there's a limited number of categories. There's a limited number of offerings that we can do for the festival. And when we first started the festival, we had no movie theaters in Bentonville. We were creating our own venues, and we were getting really inventive on like, how do we show world-class films in a space that has no movie theaters? It's a little bit different now because there are a lot of new venues in Bentonville that have opened up. So we're able to, as the city grows, move into those new venues, kind of show off the development of Bentonville and what it's becoming, which is an incredible space for art and music and film, and just a very synergetic and perfect place to have the festival. But it's a little hard, but everyone knows the process, and we hope that they submit again and they consider the festival for their next film.
Thank you for that. Now, I produce live events, and it's nowhere near the scale of a film festival, especially a film festival in Arkansas that, you have to start from the ground up. I know a lot of things can go right, but a lot of things can go wrong at the same time. So what's a behind-the-scenes story for the festival that, when you look back at it, maybe makes you cringe, but you're also thankful that you had that experience to grow?
Well, every year we always say there were no fires, but there were 1,000 paper cuts.
I don't know which is worse, but okay.
Because as the festival started, it is live events. And since I come from the theater world, I love live events. Like, I feel that the energy is there, and through the festival week, we do over 200 live events for the week. If you consider all of the screenings have conversations with the directors, and then we have a moderator. So there's all of these little components for each event, and we've gotten that dialed in a lot. But there are some funny stories along the way that you just have to run with it. Like, we had one of our sponsor commitments really early on was with a celebrity that ended up not coming. But that celebrity, that never got communicated to our partner that was waiting for this meet and greet for this celebrity that was never there. There was just these little, communication mishaps that need to be dialed in. But that was probably the most cringeworthy because, of course, I was there hosting, and I had just found out that celebrity was not at the festival and did not make it. So to have a meet and greet with someone that you thought for months and months was going to be there, and then they didn't show up. It was kind of like, what do we do? Okay, get Gina over here, or find somebody else that would be important to share with this group. But like you said, it is live events, and things are constantly changing, and you're just fluid in the process. And to me, it's fun. I like it.
Absolutely. And what's an experience behind the scenes that makes you smile every time you think about it?
Well, there are a number of experiences that make me smile. I mean, just the awards, our awards show in general is always so impactful because you get to hear from the filmmakers, and you get to hear from the filmmakers that have been trying to make their films, some of them potentially for 10 years, for as long as the festival has been around. And to see that recognition and to hear from them, their story and their journey, and how long they've been trying to tell their story, and the level of commitment that they've had to this project is so inspiring and moving. And I just think our award show is the best because our patrons and our audiences get to hear from the filmmakers. And I think that's one of the most important factors of the festival, is that it is in an intimate city. So there are a lot of opportunities to run into a filmmaker if you're an audience member and say, hey, I loved your film. We have a very engaged audience in terms of Q&As after the films. We could stay in our Q&As for an hour, and people would still have questions and want to talk about some of the content that they've seen. But also, just having, our one of our signature events is Gina and Friends, where Gina invites a bunch of women to read scripts from that were typically male driven, like Glengarry Glen Ross or The Hangover. And so they flip it to women, just to kind of share that it doesn't necessarily have to be written as for a male or a female or for someone specific but the dialogue is fun when it can be reinvented by anyone. And so that's how Jane and Friends is. And to see Jamie Brewer, we've had up there with the cast. Last year we brought in a woman that was in a Disney film called Out of My Mind. We brought her in from London to get our If She Could See It, She Could Be It award. And that was a really special moment. There are so many, and they will happen again in 2025. And that's the power of storytelling, right? And just hearing from the creators that it is an incredible medium. And I'm just excited to be in the company of these wonderful people.
Absolutely. And speaking of 2025, obviously, the country is going through some more change, and given the mission of the film festival, how do you think potential policies and things like that might impact your film festival as well as the film industry as a whole, and how do you plan on combating some of that change?
Well, I think just having the festival as a beacon for all, we represent storytelling from all over the world, and we know that our world is becoming more and more global, and we like to see that represented in storytelling. It's not that our mission is not something that is shocking. It's not a far-fetched idea to believe that storytellers and people on screen should reflect the population. And that's really what our festival stands for, is that we want to be a festival for all. These discussions and these stories, it's a great place to gather everyone and have these discussions and tell these stories, because there are a lot of important people that are at the festival, and there are a lot of, conversations that we're having. I do think at the very bottom line, it is something that we just want to reflect the population. And that's really what the mission of the festival is.
Appreciate that. I know we're running short on time, but I would be remiss not to ask you about your leadership abilities, because in order to be in your role and to have all these responsibilities, you have to be an impactful leader. I'm curious, what's your approach to leadership? And then also, how do you think your theater experience impacted that? Because I think when you work with artists and particularly actors, it gives you a specific kind of skill set as a manager, but I'd love to hear your approach to it.
It's like I said, I think everyone's background as a leader, contributes to the skills that help you succeed. And I do think you're right. Like the theater training, and I also had my own production company. So learning how to put together a team, and whether that be a team for the film festival or for a film or for any organization or company, it's understanding your teammates. And I am really a collaborative leader. Like I like to check in with my team and all different points of view. A lot of people don't like to hear thoughts from their team. They just like to make a decision and then bring it down to their team. I'm sort of the opposite. I want to understand, what are your challenges? How is this going to impact you? We recently just changed ticketing systems. So instead of me just saying, I'm going to change the ticketing system, I talked to all of our teams and tried to understand, how is this going to impact you? Is this going to make your job harder, or is this going to make your job easier? Or did you hate our ticketing system prior, and you just, I'm very curious. I'm a curious leader, and I think that really helps bring everybody to the table. And so just like similar to the festival, I really want to hear all voices. And I think that's important to be able to have a strong organization and a strong team.
That's curious, because I wanted to ask you about, how do you evaluate the year's festival, and where do you get feedback from? Do you get it from the artists? Do you get it from the attendees? Do you get it from your team? And how do you encapsulate that to determine next steps for the following year?
For sure. I mean, we have all of our sponsorship and recap meetings after the festival. So we hear feedback, critical or glowing, which usually it's, very, very glowing. But we do meet, with the city of Bentonville. We meet with the state of Arkansas. We meet with all of our, key stakeholders and sponsors. And then we also send surveys out to our participants, to our panelists, to anyone that participated at the festival gets a survey. Also, all of our filmmakers that were in the competition sections, they all get a survey. So we're very diligent about hearing that feedback. And if there's additional feedback, we'll get on the phone, we'll get on a Zoom, especially with filmmakers with disabilities. We've had a lot of different feedback and understanding how can we do better for you. If you're blind, we had a blind filmmaker a couple of years ago, and many of the feedback from her was just, have some more visual descriptions and have an opportunity for me. Like, I'm not able to actually watch the movie, but there are things that we can do to help her experience be more fulfilling. So it's constant learning, and just understanding the new technologies that are available and how we can implement that into the festival to create a better experience for all people that are coming. But it's fascinating, and it's an important question. So I appreciate you asking that, because we're not just moving forward and charging ahead in the same blueprint as last year. We're constantly integrating and hearing from our partners and stakeholders what is needed and how we can get better.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that fostering of a growth mindset. That's only how we continue to evolve, especially in this industry. One of my last questions is, how do you hope that speaking of evolution, how do you hope that the Bentonville Film Festival will continue to grow? And what advice do you have for a filmmaker who wants to be a part of the festival and submit their work?
Yeah, the festival, we hope to be around for another 10 years, and we're continuing to work toward that every day. We've added a couple of new events this year in 2025. So we're collaborating with UTA on a creator convergence. So we will be bringing, amplifying voices and ventures. So it's like, what are shaping the latest trends in entertainment, from influencers to gaming to music to short form content, brand collaborations. We do work with a lot of brands. So we think our one of the opportunities that we can bring to filmmakers is, how do you work with the brand? What do those collaborations look like? And we work with Mars very closely on that. They have an initiative where they give a $25,000 grant, and they give access to their agencies as well as shadowing opportunities within the brand. So last year, one of our filmmakers was able to shadow an M&M's campaign. So just having those opportunities are extremely important to storytellers to diversify their sources of income and how they are able to work, because working on a feature film, it takes a long time to finish, and you may not have that income coming in. But if you're working on a commercial or a campaign or a collaboration with a brand or social impact, there's other ways to bring in that income. And you can also work on these long-term projects, but you have these shorter term jobs coming in, which we hear from our alumni is really, really important to them. We've added a STEAM symposium as well this year, where we'll be talking about storytelling and AI and how these sort of technologies are benefiting or detracting from art and content. So we're really inspired by the creative landscape, and just kind of really looking forward to bringing those conversations into the middle of our country and having a discussion with everyone, in the heartland. So those are some of the new things that we're bringing in, and just continuing to develop the programming for the festival to, attract, to be a destination festival. We do have people coming from all over the country and all over the world, but we feel like that is growing and continuing to grow as the region continues to grow. Yeah.
Wendy, I've appreciated this conversation so much. And my last question for you is, what's a film that was featured in the festival that still sits with you, that still resonates with you?
Well, many, but our last year's opening night film, A Great Divide with Ken Jeong, I think it's a really important story. The whole cast is Korean in front and behind the camera, and Jean Shim is the director and storyteller. And it just got distribution. I believe it's on Apple and all of the streaming services right now. So it's a really important story about Asian American families in our culture, and it takes place in Montana. So it's It's quite compelling, and I think everybody should see it if they can.
Amazing. Wendy, thank you so much. Please tell the listeners how they can keep up with you as well as the film festival and 2025's iteration.
Well, our passes are going to be going on sale for 2025, and we are doing a Black Friday special. So it'll start on Black Friday. It's going to be for a week. You'll get 25% off those passes, and you can go to www.bentonvillefilm.org and get your passes, and just continue to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook for updates on single tickets and program announcements. So, yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the conversation, Brandon. It was really nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you as well. And on behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, we thank you for being a guest on the AFCA podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Wendy Guerrero. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode of the AFCA podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll learn about new episodes as soon as they're released. You can find all things AFCA at afca.com or follow us at AFCA on Instagram. Have a great day.